Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Clarity in Commerce. This is the interview series brought to you by the Mars Agency, where we host conversations about game-changing trends in commerce marketing with some of the talented, forward-thinking professionals that we've got the pleasure of working with on a regular basis as our clients and our partners. Our topic today is using new technology to revitalize mature categories. Our guest is somebody who's been doing that for what could probably be one of the most mature of all categories in the whole CPG industry. And that's Al Dejewski, who is Vice President of Marketing for the Milk Processor Education Program, better known as MilkPEP. Al has more than 20 years of experience in CPG sales and marketing across roles that have covered the full spectrum: brand, customer, consumer, shopper. He's done it with a number of blue chip companies, including Chobani, PepsiCo, and LaCroix. He joined MilkPEP back in 2020 to help the cooperative modernize its marketing for millennial parents, Gen Z, and Alpha kids. Al, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thanks so much, Peter, and I appreciate you having me.
Okay, and if you're ready to go, we will just jump right in with the questions.
Absolutely, sounds great.
Okay, so to start off, for those who might not know, if you could just give us a little bit of an explanation about what MilkPEP is and what it does.
No, that's a great setup. Absolutely. MilkPEP is what is known as an agricultural marketing services checkoff program. It was developed in the 1990s by an act of Congress to help support different agricultural businesses in the United States. There's approximately 30 different checkoff programs in the US, ranging from the Cattlemen's Board, which has done beef, it's what's for dinner, the pork board, the pork gets the other white meat, the egg board, who does incredible edible egg, and MilkPEP, which is famous for its iconic campaign, Got Milk, utilizing the milk mustache across celebrities from all walks of lives.
Okay. And then can you give us a brief overview of trends in the category in recent years? It doesn't really seem like evolution really fully describes what's been going on.
No, that's true. You know, if you think about milk, milk has been around for centuries. It has raised generations upon generations of families in the United States and across the globe. And in fact, in the US, milk today still represents a $25 billion plus category, 15 billion in retail alone. And over those years, you're right, there hasn't been a whole lot of investment and innovation around packaging or even product for that matter. But there has been some bright spots, right? Milk still purchased in over 90% of households over the last 52 weeks, over half of households in the last 4 weeks. So, as I like to say, milk doesn't have an awareness problem, it has an attitude problem, right? And really that attitude problem has, weakened over the years from generation to generation, or generational cohort to cohort, from boomers to Xers, so on and so forth. So, we've got our work cut out for us, but, we are committed and focused to making sure people are aware and know milk for its positive benefits.
Okay. Now, as we said up top, you joined about 3 years ago. Can you tell us about what the strategic focus has been since you joined?
Yeah, no, thank you. Back in 2019, MilkPEP and its board went out and recruited a new CEO, and the CEO is Yin Rani. Yin has a storied and a wonderful career in the agency business, and then went on to work at Campbell's for 4 or 5 years, and then she came over to MilkPEP to help really transform and revolutionize the way the milk industry had been marketed in the past. I joined her shortly thereafter in the summer of 2020, almost 3 years now. And, together we went out, and the first thing we did was do an RFP for a new agency roster, one that represented a much more digital first, modern marketing approach. We knew that if we were going to really try to change the trajectory of milk, that we weren't going to be able to fall back on our traditional CPG muscle, right? The regular playbook for a mature and declining category wasn't going to work. So we went out, we did an RFP, talked to a dozen different agencies and their subsidiary firms, and we found a unique partnership, with Gale Partners and with Mars to help us kind of revolutionize milk. And so our mission, is simply put, is to modernize milk by being rooted in culture.
Okay, and so then how exactly do you do that? How do you modernize milk for today's audience?
Yeah, it's no easy task. Milk, as I said, we control the marketing communication strategy for milk. So we pick up the milk work from the processor to the retailer, to the shopper and consumer. The processor, 65 plus, who fund us and have us as their marketing department, they're on the hook for product, packaging, and even trade promotion. We don't get involved in that because that's a competitive environment, and we remain pre-competitive and represent the entire milk category in a fair and equitable way. So for us, we talk about the strategy and the framework being rooted in culture through leveraging technology and data to use our money efficiently against a targeted addressable audience of what we call modern milk families. Then we bring them a modern contemporary copy strategy, not strong bones and muscles anymore, but talking about today's relevant consumer derived benefits that they're looking for. And then we also bring to life in a very modern media approach, a combination of broad reach vehicles like digital, programmatic, out of home, and addressable first party, CRM strategies against those modern milk households. And then lastly, we break through culture by finding the right platforms at the right time. Sometimes they're one and done. Sometimes they're longer platforms to engage with consumers on their terms, where milk can show up in a relevant and meaningful way as the OG performance drink.
Okay, now if we can drill down there,
Yep.
how do you identify the right technologies, the right platforms to use?
Well, luckily, I mean, hey, we're always students of the industry, right? And when you represent the milk community, you're fortunate to be invited to a lot of previews and betas, but also we get a lot of that learning and those opportunities from partners like you at Mars and partners at Gale, and then the media partnerships that we have throughout our backgrounds and our experiences. So, for example, on technology, we have not built our own proprietary marketing stack at MilkPEP, but we've partnered with both Gale for their Alchemy stack and for Mars for the Ask Maryland stack to help us identify those high prime prospect households. What you have to realize is, given milk's maturity and the evolution of the alternatives that exist today, we define modern milk households by those millennial parents that drink a lot of milk, regardless of the source of milk, right? Because if you're already buying milk for those perceived or real benefits from dairy, we know that you're in that mindset of buying milk for you and your family. What we want to do is make sure you fully understand the benefits of one versus the other and claw back some of those lost occasions. So we're looking for high volume milk households, regardless of the source of milk, so that we can regain share of mind, share of stomach, and eventually share of market.
Okay. But when we talk about new technologies, it's not always just brand new things, right? You've been able to find ways to kind of revive some old marketing tools through new ways, right? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. In 2020, obviously we had COVID, right? And we were all stuck at home. We were all looking for something more lighthearted and fun. And we were looking really to jumpstart the milk business. Now, like many CPG categories, and really, I would call it iconic and legacy brands, including, Campbell's and General Mills brands and other brands, cereal as a category, we all benefited from COVID because of stay-at-home economy for that year. As people eat more often away from home, they choose other things than they have in the cupboard, right? So when we are forced to stay at home and hunker down with uncertainty, we go for comfort. And we saw a big spike in milk, as we saw a big spike in yeast, people baking their own breads and pizza doughs. But when we were coming out of it in the summertime, or starting to recognize what we're dealing with, we leveraged technology through social media to launch our rebranding effort around the First Got Milk Challenge, featuring Katie Ledecky. So you got to remember, the Olympics were scheduled for that year, and we wanted to use the latest social media technology to reach consumers. And we put her in a pool with chocolate milk on her head, and she swam in an Olympic-length pool without spilling a drop. And then we leveraged that to build on that energy and excitement to really drive more awareness and more consumption through the balance of 2020. But 2021, we came out of the Olympics, and we had a unique partnership opportunity through our Dairy Management Incorporated partners in Chicago with the NFL and Fuel Up to Play 60. And at that time, we knew we had already started repositioning milk as a performance drink, the OG sports drink or the OG performance drink. And we wanted to leverage their NFL ties to really highlight 4 young stars in the league. And we did some incredible content with them. But beyond content and seeing it socially, we were all hearing about, obviously, the blockchain, cryptocurrency, and then the evolution of the two into this unique space called NFTs, non-fungible tokens, right? And so, our team at Mars came up with this idea. So you're using this great content already. You've already created with these NFL stars from Justin Herbert to Juju Schuster-Smith and Derrick Henry. Why don't we bring all that content to life in a unique digital property called an NFT? And I was like, oh, well, that sounds interesting. And they're like, well, imagine you're back in your youth, Al, and you're trading Topps football cards. That's what it is in a digital environment. So why don't we build a campaign, call it Make the Trade, because you're trading cards. They have an intrinsic value and they trade up on a real-time basis. And what we can do is create a range of these NFTs by player that are rare, super rare, or exclusive. And we can build excitement around your promotion, your product in store, and more importantly, across the whole metaverse. So we built these NFT program with these stars called Make the Trade, put it on over 50 million gallon packages of milk, which ran for about 4 to 6 weeks. And we launched it in December of 2021 and ran it through the Super Bowl playoffs and had tremendous success with it.
Okay, and so thereby revitalizing the traditional aisle, right, in the store with these new technologies.
Well, that's exactly right. Not only was it sitting on the sides of millions of packages of milk, but we also made sure to dress the store both in traditional POS, but also digital POS, and partner with other marketers like InMarket and other platforms that help drive that engagement and awareness when shoppers were in working their digital lists as well.
Okay. Is any one element of that campaign that we just say was the most important to its success?
It's hard not to give credit to packaging. When you're talking about 4 to 6 weeks of packaging generating tens of millions of impressions in homes, that's for us our single largest billboard, right? The problem, as you can imagine, when you're marketing a category, you don't have control over everyone's packaging. So, I covered about 2/3 of the country's volume, but wasn't able to get the other third converted in time for the promotion. So we walked away from it. We represent, as I said, 65 plus processors, but that's over 100 different brands because some processors manufacture multiple brands from different states and regions. And so we try to harmonize as much as possible. But for me, that not only got into the milk households, but introduced this entire new technology, probably to 70% of those households who weren't familiar with it, by leveraging the power of the NFL and those iconic players.
And shameless plug, Make the Trade program has won a couple of awards. It won the Omni Shopper program. Right?
It has. I'm excited to say it exceeded our expectations. We're milk, right? We're doing a football program on the side of a package, and we use this new technology. And we won 2 great awards. We won a Reggie last month. We were awarded that from the folks, and then prior to that, Path to Purchase Institute also recognized the promotion as well. So 2 awards for one great promotion, and we couldn't be more ecstatic about it.
Okay. And then now once you get the ball rolling with things like that, do you have to one up yourself? What's next in the plan?
Well, we have to, we're milk, and for years, kind of the milk category chugged along and did their stuff. But, with all the innovation and proliferation of other to ready to drink beverages, even bottled water stealing share from milk had gotten pretty meh, right? So you can't do the same thing over and over again. So coming out of 21 in our sports performance of using elite athletes, Olympiads and then NFL stars, we followed up by moving to female flag football players, right? Because really the future is female and the future is here, right? So, and when you think about the beautiful, kind of organic link between females and milk and performance and the role of the female as mom and female as herself, we felt that it was really important to put a stake in the ground and support female athletes as we did the male athletes. The other thing that really, kind of hit us home also was, less than 10% of sponsorship dollars goes to women, and about only 5% of sports media coverage goes to women athletes. So we decided, rather than to broadly, kind of talk to everyone through males and females, that we would put a stake in the ground and exclusively support women athletes moving forward. And so in 2023, in March of this year, we announced on International Women's Day that all our marketing investment in front of the camera and behind the camera would be female focused. We would not highlight another male athlete this year. So when you think about where we are today on our 2 platform executions and activations running, And on gaming for the youth, all we feature are women athletes and women gamers.
That's great. Okay. One final question, a little bit of a personal one. What would you say your favorite use case for milk is?
You know, when I was younger, I spent about 15 years competing in triathlons, and going from a local triathlon to a moderate distance to doing 4 Ironman. And over those years, I have to tell you, I am a tried and true believer and advocate of chocolate milk for recovery. So for me, I come home, after a 50-mile bike ride and a 5-mile run or whatever the distance was in my training regimen, and I would prepare a recovery drink with protein powder in chocolate milk and peanut butter and a banana. And, I sucked that down over the next 30 minutes while I tried to recatch my breath. So.
Well, that's very impressive, Al. You're making me feel bad for still dunking the Oreos in the glass.
You'll love that too. Nothing like a bowl of cereal once in a while, all in moderation.
Absolutely. Okay, great. That wraps up this episode of Clarity in Commerce. On behalf of everybody here at the Mars Agency, I just want to thank Al Dejewski from MilkPEP for being here today, giving us all this great insights. Al, thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it.
Also, thanks to everybody out there for joining us today. We know you're really busy. Your time is very valuable. We appreciate you giving some of us. Hopefully, you're walking away with some ideas on making your jobs a little easier and your work a little more productive. If you need more information about using new technology to drive engagement, go visit the marsagency.com website, where we've got an Insights and Thinking blog that can give you a lot of great information to help you with that. That includes an in-depth case study of the Make the Trade program that we talked about here today. And then, of course, we hope to see you back here in a couple of more weeks for the next edition of Clarity in Commerce. Thanks and have a great day.